Hello, entrepreneurs and self-starters. This is Ric Phillips from YEDI, and you're listening to the Startup Sandwich Podcast, the show that unpacks the bread-winning basics, juicy-filled journey, and secret sauce of entrepreneurship. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone, to the Startup Sandwich Podcast, and more importantly, Happy New Year, Happy 2026. We are in January, and it is snowing. Today, we're going to talk to a wonderful person named Fabio Crespin. And Fabio, I'm going to read this just briefly.
Please.
In today's episode, we learn how Fabio Crespin is on the flip side of startups and uses data to help small businesses land the employees that will take them from startup to success. Let's lose the paper, as we always do. Fabio, before we get into that, because I think that's a bit of a mouthful, I just want to slow things down a bit and just talk about, when did you get into the space of entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Thank you, Rick, first of all, to having me. Pleasure to be here. So I think I touch entrepreneurship on different forms, I would say. First, I'm an immigrant to Canada, and I think there is a bit of a entrepreneurship movement to leave your country, go to another one, and start from scratch, I would say. And I moved to Canada before even coming to Canada, so I never came to Canada before moving to Canada. This was around 20 years ago. But before that, in Brazil, where I come from, I used to work for the Brazilian support system for the micro and small business, which is the largest funder and capacity builder of entrepreneurs in Brazil. Mm-hmm. And I worked for them for 6 years. So I would say that's where I started to get connected to entrepreneurs, investing and, helping them to build their business plans and to make, and important to say that, I study business in Brazil. I work in investment banking, but for a while I was a scuba diving instructor, and you'll see why I'm going there. So for many years I was a scuba diving instructor. So I study business, I work in investment banking, then I went traveling for a few years, scuba diving, and then I went back to Brazil and said, what I'm going to do now? My father told me, you should open a diving center. Maybe I should have heard him. I didn't. But then I found a job in the Brazilian support system for the micro and small business, helping entrepreneurs in the tourism. So I continued traveling, but at this time within Brazil, and helping entrepreneurs who had kind of the raw material. Maybe they had a waterfall in their property, or they had a farm that was very nice, but very raw. Mm-hmm, so I helped them transform what they had in a product, right? To help develop the business plan, help them see the raw material into a product, and then apply for funding with the organization itself. Mm-hmm. So this is where I started. Mm-hmm. Here in Canada, I'm part of United Way. I lead our inclusive employment team. Our inclusive employment team looks after all our investments in employment, workforce development, and employment social enterprises as well. So I think that in the last 10 years, I've worked for United Way for 11 years. In the last 10 years, my connection with entrepreneurship is more on the employment social enterprise side. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. Great. There's a lot there. Thank you so much. I want to start with the most important subject was it PADI?
With PADI. Yeah. You know what PADI stands for, right? So it's Professional Association of Diving Instructors, but they say it's pay after diving immediately because it's pretty commercial.
I retired my diving days. Are you still actively diving or no?
No. I'm a retired instructor too.
And did you dive in Canada, the cold waters as well?
I haven't. I went to Tobermory.
I've been there. Yeah.
I was going to dive there, but for whatever reason, didn't happen. In the last 10 years, maybe I do a couple of dives. I went to Cuba. I went to Cozumel, Mexico, and I did a couple of dives. But really, I'm retired for sure.
Right. I'd love to talk about diving and travel only, but since we're talking about entrepreneurship, I'll get back on track. So what you mentioned, and this is what my ears heard.
Please.
You mentioned, I did business and banking, and then I started working with this organization to help all these entrepreneurs, blah, blah, blah. It's awesome. But my question to you, I think now is, what made you jump? I think it's a jump to go from straightforward business, banking, financial, to the world of entrepreneurship, because you didn't have to. So did you stumble into it accidentally and love it? Did you say, this is something I really am attracted? Like, what made you actually go to that world of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So as you said, I came from investment banking, which is really purely business and investments and all of that. Then I went traveling, as I said. So for a few years I was traveling. And then when I went back to Brazil, one thing I thought, I want to put my skills and knowledge to something transformational.
Mhm.
So I think that was my main drive. I don't want to, and nothing against folks who are selling shoes or toothpaste or whatever product,
Right.
but I felt that I wanted to put my skills and my competencies to help folks to succeed or to help society at large,
Right.
knowing my limitations, of course, humbly speaking. But then that's where I came up with the idea. So how can I again, help society to get better?
Mhm.
How can I help folks to realize their dreams and aspirations? And I came across this idea of putting my business background with my years of traveling, and I put this together,
Mhm.
and then came the opportunity to work for this organization in Brazil.
Thank you. And I love that you're also talking about this this almost a desire or need to help other people in whatever capacity you can. A lot of people think maybe entrepreneurship is all about making money. I mean, one of the pros would be, I'm going to be my own boss. I'm going to make my own money. I'm going to set my own standards, which is all great.
Of course.
But I love when entrepreneurs like yourself talk about the benefit, the personal benefit of when you're in that space and how you can help people, whether you're mentoring, whether you're contributing, whether you're working for a government or NPO. So that's amazing. And to tie this in, you mentioned that you work for United Way.
Yeah.
So tell us just briefly, what is it you do with United Way that helps the entrepreneurs in Canada?
Yeah. So, interestingly, as I shared with you that, United Way is the largest funder of social services in Canada after the government. We have what we call 13 issue areas that range from childcare all the way to senior services and everything in between, mental health, substance abuse, newcomers to Canada, women's issues, 13 issue areas. I shared with you that I lead our inclusive employment team. We're a small team of 5 folks, invest roughly $8 million in, employment services, workforce development, this type of things. Interestingly, entrepreneurship is not one of the components of our investments. It is just under the employment social enterprise, but not, if you want to open a business, and why we choose that, we thought it was too specialized for us to get involved with. That was our decision-making in the past. So again, I think that what we do now in terms of entrepreneurship is employment social enterprises, which means helping entrepreneurs who are creating business, which sole or main purpose is to create opportunities to train multi-barrier job seekers, right? So just as an example, we support a coffee shop that is at Cambridge, for example, right? And employ folks who are being served by Cambridge.
Right.
So just to give an example, and I don't want to create any stereotype,
right.
But again, businesses that have been created with the sole purpose of helping folks to gain the skill sets and competencies that they can thrive. Now, when we talk about employment social enterprise, Rick, there are 2 types. One that we call parallel, and one that we call link. The parallel ones are the ones who are going to run parallel to our mainstream society. It's serving folks who are so barrier that most cases they won't be able to transition to a mainstream employer, and which is absolutely fine. So they always need accommodations. They always need a bit more support in order for them to thrive.
Right.
And we also support job seekers who have barriers, but they're linked. After a while, after some accommodations, they are strong enough and ready to move to mainstream. And that's why we're calling a link type of social enterprise.
It reminds me of a couple of businesses that I know, and I'm sure you know tenfold that, where you have businesses that, for example, that might be half for-profit, half non-profit, or they might be 2 businesses in one where they may support people that, as you mentioned, maybe need some extra help or need some extra support. But then they also have another side that may be straightforward business. For example, I remember a chocolate company that would employ people with developmental disabilities to make the chocolate, but then they would sell the chocolate to the open market.
Yeah.
Where I'm at in Yonge and St. Clair in Toronto here, there's a coffee shop. Same thing. The people they hire at the coffee shop are people with some sort of developmental disabilities, but they sell the coffee to the open market. So this is a really forward way of doing entrepreneurship, and it sounds like United Way is really helping support that initiative, right?
Yes, absolutely, Rick. And as you were speaking, what came to my mind, which really links employment social enterprise or a new enterprise of any type, is the notion of you need to be able to strive on it on your own. So even if you're supporting folks experiencing barriers, ideally, you should at least be even. At least your income, your revenues should pay you your expenses, right? Yes. Which is very difficult to happen in employment social enterprises. Often because you have a smaller ratio of supervision to workers, or because maybe you have a bit of waste, or whatever reason, often employment social enterprises are not sustainable, so they again needs grants to be able to survive, which is fine. But generally speaking, the ones that really thrive are the ones that receive a grant, but after a while are able to walk on their own. Right. And which I think connects to any type of business. You should be able to survive on your own.
It's a good point. There's a lot of people that perhaps think that if I get a grant once, I'll get it forever, and they don't realize that a lot of grants or loans are really time limited, 2-3 years, et cetera. And the point of that is to stand on their own. So if there are entrepreneurs out there listening to us and they are running a social enterprise or considering running a social enterprise, could they contact United Way directly and see if there's some support there?
Of course. I mean, we do have we have processes to fund and very transparent processes, so requests for proposals and so on. But absolutely, I'm happy to leave my name and email, Employment Social Enterprise, just to have a conversation, and then I can share with them when the next call for proposal will be. I can connect them with employment social enterprises now that they can learn from. Right. Any way that I can support, of course, they can connect with me.
This is great. We could end the interview right here because that's the goal that everyone's looking for. But we won't. So now I wanted to ask you a personal question.
Please.
When you came from Brazil and that whole entrepreneur market and support system that you had there, and then you came to Canada, what did you notice was different or the same in that entrepreneurship space?
Yeah, I think we live in a very progressive country. I think sometimes when you are in front of the wall, you need to give 2 steps backwards in order to see and to realize what you have. Or generally speaking, I read once that normally we need to lose things in order to value them, right? Which is, and then I try to make a conscious exercise, even teaching my kids, like, value what you have, value. Don't wait until you lose it. Value, be thankful, right? But you ask me about the difference. So again, I think we're a very progressive country. I haven't heard of, employment. I was, the company that I was working was funding business entrepreneurs, which is great. A bit of kind of a futurepreneur type of thing here in Toronto. I haven't heard, I don't think we have, maybe now more, but when I left Brazil 20 years ago, we didn't have employment social enterprises. There was not such a notion of a business that would function as a way to train folks with barriers. I don't think we had this type of business there. While here in Canada, we have a long history of employment social enterprise. But that said, Ric, and folks who are listening to us, it is becoming more tight. I have to say that, right? I think in the past, and for entrepreneurs at large, for everyone, money is more tight now, I think for everyone. So I think the notion of being able to demonstrate how, if not now, in the soon future, you are able to create something sustainable is also very important in the employment social enterprise.
The key word there is sustainable. So don't just have the vision, but be able to prove it with your pitches, with your business plan, whether you're going to an organization like United Way or elsewhere, just thinking about how you can really prove that point because the competition's tough these days.
Absolutely. And I hope I'm not speaking too much, but another day I like to take pictures as a hobby. So I have around 2,000 pictures in my Instagram. And then I was talking to my wife and I said, do you think I can monetize or, can make money of these pictures? And she laughed at me and said, Fabio, come on, there are so many pictures there. And I'm not even a professional. I think I have good pictures, but, and the quality I'm taking with my cell phone. But then I said, you know what, I'm going to ask ChatGPT. Right? So I went to ChatGPT, I have around 2,000 pictures. I think they're good. And can I make money on it? And ChatGPT said to me, Fabio, are people asking for, using your pictures? Right. Do you have, thousands of likes in your pictures? Are people using your pictures and acknowledging you? And none of that is true for me. Right. So there is no potential. If none of that is true, you have no potential to make money on your pictures. Nice that you have a portfolio of pictures, but there is no, there is no market signs that there is a business in what you're saying. Again, and looping with connecting with what we said before, the notion of assessing and being realistic. Do I have something here that, and maybe you don't have the signs yet, which is fine, but you need to pay attention to that. Is it commercially viable, right? And I think this is perhaps the basic of any entrepreneurship assessment.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs are going to go onto ChatGPT right now and start asking some questions and seeing where they're at. But it brings up a good point, whether you're asking an app or a person, a mentor or an instructor or business member, as long as you're getting some kind of honest opinion, at least to get you started. The challenge with entrepreneurs, a lot of them, and tell me your experience as well, but sometimes they're pretty stubborn and bullheaded, which is good if you're going to be an entrepreneur, but sometimes they don't listen to maybe good advice, and the one in a million that actually makes it work, they're like, aha, I told you. But there's so many that stubbornly fail.
Yeah. And then again, I think about my kids as well, Rick, which is the notion of calibration, right? You need to calibrate, going like, quote unquote, blindly to your idea and, pursuing that with realism too.
Right.
I think that's the calibration, which is a very difficult calibration to do. And I'm saying my kids, because generally speaking, I tell them you need to calibrate, right? So you're right, but maybe you're too much here. And this is an exercise for the whole life.
Right.
And I think for an entrepreneur as well, right? So nice to be a bit stubborn and say, I'm going to pursue that. I think this is a good driver.
Right.
But at the same time, keep your eyes and ears open and, get the feedback and listen to other folks.
Yeah. We have this conversation sometimes with the students at YEDI, whether the for-profit or nonprofit or international programs. And quite often what I'll say to them is something to the effect of, it's good to have different opinions, like what you want to call them, your mentors or your teammates, whatever you want to call them. It's good to have different opinions, but ultimately it's going to rest on your shoulders to kind of make that final decision. So it's kind of like both. It's like, don't do it alone. At the same time, you're alone. From that kind of, at least the decision point. And that's the life of an entrepreneur, I think, right? I mean, you can't really escape that.
Absolutely. And often when I think about, who was it? Oh, I just read another day that the founders of Airbnb they were about to give up, and whatever happened, they got a grant, and how many stories we heard as well of how long it takes for successful business that we know today to become successful, right? How many no's you have until they yet. So I think it's important to be, like stubborn, if you will, when you're an entrepreneur. But again, don't be so stubborn that you're not able to read the hints and leads that are coming around you and do a true assessment of the market.
And it's good that these days it seems like with entrepreneurship is that there are a lot of these opportunities for people to surround themselves with other entrepreneurs or trainers. So again, whether it's a program that's teaching education, whether it's a program that's giving some type of support, and even the one in Brazil you mentioned, it's like there's a lot of people here with resources that can talk to you or help you along your journey, right? And so entrepreneurship is much more of a community-based program now, I think, right? I know YEDI for sure prides itself in the community. With United Way, the programs you're involved in, are you finding that as well? That it's like there's so many people behind you. You may be talking to the entrepreneur, but there's so many people behind you to help support them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think there is a community of social entrepreneurs, if you will, who are supporting each other. But I agree with you that there are many folks behind any ideas, and from friends to colleagues to the bank who is going to potentially give you money to start, who is also, I think, a person who is deeply assessing your capacity to give back the money, which is an important fundamental assessment. Yes, absolutely. I think that, it takes a village, as they say.
It takes a village to raise a child. I'm going to ask you a question. I hope it's not unfair, because I haven't given you time to prep, because this is not scripted for everyone to understand. We just have a natural conversation. But what I'd like to know is if maybe you could talk about one or two case studies from Canada, from your experience that you've seen. It could be like a success story, or it could be like just a good learning story. But maybe you could give us one or two case studies from your work at United Way.
Yeah. So one successful one, which I confess to you, and I'm not, of course, going to give the name, but I will give you a bit of a sense, was someone who started to produce cookies, and the folks who were involved were folks with developmental learning disabilities. And, and again, I thought, wow, are you able to survive in such a competitive market selling cookies, And in the first place, I would say possibly my first reaction would be, no, I don't think you are. You need to have something more, I don't know, creative, or you need to have a differentiator if you're competing with, I don't know, from Tim Hortons to a more elaborated
Girl
cookie.
Guides.
Exactly. So you're, any supermarket and anything. But she thrived and she succeeded. She really succeeded. And her drive was, I think, her daughter or son that had one of these challenges, and she was driven, and when I first spoke to her, and of course, I'm very careful because I'm just guessing in terms of, but we now change it a bit. But before, Rick, we used to fund so we would receive an idea. If the idea was, quote unquote, good enough and approved by us, and used to call the Toronto Enterprise Fund. It was a partnership between United Way, the City of Toronto, and the province. So we had like 3 parties together. So we just receive an idea. Okay, Fabio, or we want to open a cookie store, right? And then if you think that there are some possibilities there, would help them develop the business case, and then we had a set of volunteers who judge, and the folks who approve the business case will become a business plan. So we go kind of in a phase approach. And she went, and again, in the first place, we said, oh, maybe this is not going to work. She went step by step and succeed. And I think she's working until now. I think, she's still like delivering cookies and doing amazing work. So this is a successful one.
Well, let me
please.
Let me stop you. I want to ask a question about the cookies. Again, I know we don't want to divulge all the specifics, but in your opinion, now that we know that it's at least reasonably successful, in your opinion, what was the spark, the innovation, the uniqueness that made it successful?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think the connection with folks with developmental disabilities really, I think, create a differentiator to her cookies, different than other ones. So I think folks who were motivated to support the cause.
Right.
I think also she had a good price. I think all the other indicators or components of market analysis were there too. So she didn't put the price very high. I think also she had like good packaging, kind of the basics of entrepreneurship or marketing, if you will. So good packaging, good price points. She, quote unquote, play well with the notion of who are preparing and how your contribution is supporting folks with developmental disabilities. So anyway, I think it was a good match, a good mix of ingredients that led to success.
Yeah, we're talking about recipes of cookies, and it's the recipe for the cookie business, right? Yeah, and I love that you said that, because there may be people out there who are thinking like, oh, I've got to do something really, really far out there and unique, and I don't want to do something standard. But just like you're talking about, a good business plan, a good marketing, the 4 Ps or something, right?
Yeah.
Those foundations will carry you far. And then on top of that, with that heart and soul that was in that business and that message out there, so people understood what they're buying, that produced some positive results. So very good, right? We don't always have to reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely. And just yesterday I was talking to my wife again about this. I said, and often I come across businesses, then when I think, I would say, imagine if I come to you now, Rick, and say, I'm planning to open a business that will have warehouses where I'm going to have all the products of the planet in these warehouses. Right. So hats, I'll have like 20 types of hats. Glasses, I'll have 30 types of glasses. You name it. Right? In a warehouse, you're going to say, Fabio, this doesn't work, man. Right, but then you have Amazon, which works. I know that my wife said, but not all the products are there. But a lot of, the vast majority are. Right. And I know that some will take more time, coming from China or another location, but they have huge work. So I thought that this will never work, Rick, if you stop. So just to corroborate what you said, yes, for innovation, of course, but often, things that doesn't look like is going to work, they may. Yeah. And that is the crux right there with entrepreneurship, right? Is that it might work and it might not. Yeah. And it might take a year and it might take 35 years and who knows? And that's sort of what's attractive as well about entrepreneurship, I think. Yeah. Right. But definitely I think that we can agree that if it's a social enterprise of some kind, the heart and soul has to be clear. The mission has to be clear, right? It has to be so people understand that they're supporting a bigger cause. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think another example, I don't know if an example of a not successful one, but I give you another one, which is very successful, is a company that is an employment social enterprise on the construction business, right?
Okay.
So they train folks with barriers, often folks involved in the criminal justice system that are leaving the criminal justice system to enter the trades. And so that's their part of their business. But they also have a social enterprise that provides support, provides services, construction services for anyone that wants to buy. They have, I think, contracts with the city of Toronto and et cetera. So they train folks and they use their contracts to employ the folks that they're training. A bit of the link that I told you before.
Right.
So folks maybe will arrive late in the first day, so they have some accommodations that eventually a mainstream employer wouldn't accept.
Right.
They accept. And they use the business that they are able to develop to create these opportunities, and they thrive. They really, I think they're one of the best examples that I give of employment social enterprise that are really sustainable. They're really sustainable. They even generate kind of profits that they reinvest in the business.
Nice.
But again, the notion of, yes, I'll create space for training, but I have contracts, like business contracts that I have to deliver to that create the opportunities for the folks that I'm serving.
Yeah, it's great. And it's someone they thought about it, they made all the proper arrangements, and they've got the government involved, and that's really important for that success.
Indeed.
Good. I want to switch topics slightly. At the beginning of our conversation, before we went on camera, we chatted just very briefly about you used to do some talks or workshops for YEDI. So I want to touch on that just for a second. So for those out there that may not know, YEDI has a stream which is specifically for nonprofits and charities. So we train entrepreneurs that wish to be executive directors or something to the effect. And then we have guest speakers, guest lectures, et cetera. So tell us a little bit about when you got involved with YEDI and what were you asked to do?
Yeah, so it was very nice actually, and I have a lot of appreciation for the YEDI team. It's been, I think, a couple of years that I haven't been there, but before I've been there a few times, maybe 3 or 4 times, speaking to graduates or to participants of the nonprofit program, which I agree with you, some of them aspire to be executive directors or leaders in nonprofits, and someone just to create a nonprofit organization and to start from scratch. So my conversations were around our sector, what we see in terms of changes, and I think, so just as an example, this has been even more intense in the last couple of years, but the impact of automation, for example, just to give an example, in the nonprofit sector as well, to a certain extent, eliminating some form of entry-level jobs, and I think this is happening across all industries, right? So the notion that automation, artificial intelligence don't replace people, but replace tasks, right? And to a certain extent, yes, it's also impacting the nonprofit sector. I think this is something that I have already alluded to when I first met folks there. I also think that I spoke to the notion of, yes, you can aspire to be an executive director of a nonprofit, but as most of the business is good to start from the ground. It's good to have ground experience, right? So if you want to, be the executive director of a community services agency, ideally, you should be working on the ground and serving folks on the ground. So the notion of kind of giving one step backward and being a bit humble, nice, you're equipped and you're prepared to become an executive director, which I think it's true, but I think the live experience is also a fundamental piece in almost all the businesses, no doubt in the nonprofit sector.
It's a good point. The idea that, let's say someone has experience even elsewhere, but with a similar business, similar nonprofit, even that experience they can bring into their new vision idea. But if someone has zero experience with the nonprofit world or the social service world or whatever it might be, social enterprise world, I meant.
Yeah.
That could be a challenge for them. They've got this leadership idea that's ready to go, but if they've got no experience, that's a big uphill battle, isn't it?
I think so, Rick. And even if you have experience, and again, I'm an immigrant myself, and I brought some experience from Brazil. Yes, I think they are transferable, absolutely, and skills and competences are transferable too. But in general, my advice is be humble,
right?
Give one step backward, maybe work 1-2 years, build these muscles, and you feel more confident for whatever you want to do. So absolutely, even if you bring experience, in case you're an immigrant or not, if you're born here, you have some experience, great, but don't hesitate to really kind of go to the ground and help, from the beginning, from the scratch.
I'll add my YEDI perspective to that as well.
Please.
a lot of the students that attend our nonprofit program, they do see themselves as an executive director in the making, whether they've already got a nonprofit going or whether they're trying to build it. So taking your advice, and I would add to that if that person does not have a lot of relevant skills, education, experience to combine with, then definitely think quickly about building that team, even that board of really, really experienced people to help balance that out, or else it's a really big challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the notion that you don't need to be the king, but you need to be a friend of the king, or maybe not too much applicable. But if you don't know, at least surround yourself or folks that can support you. And absolutely.
Very good. Let's go back to a little bit about what's happening right now at United Way. Give us an idea of what you're doing, maybe predict the next 6 months to a year, what you see happening in the industry.
Yeah, so I think, in terms of United Way, I shared with you, we have 13 issue areas. I think one of the things that we are considering now is potentially become even more focused. Instead of having 13, maybe having a smaller number. We haven't landed yet, and we're working closely with community for consultations and, advice, so community can inform that. But we are considering becoming a bit more laser focused in some areas, what we know already, and we've been speaking publicly about employment, which is the area that my small mighty team work on, and housing are two big issues of our society. Of course, all the other ones continue to be very relevant: mental health, substance abuse, all of that, or newcomers, challenges. This is still very important, and we'll continue to work with these areas. But as I said, we are planning to be a bit more laser sharp in some areas, and what we know until now, that employment and housing are going to be will continue to be very important for us.
Right. You want to be laser focused for efficiency and for have a sharper impact.
Yes, exactly. And also because, unfortunately, although we are the largest in Canada in terms of nonprofit, or one of the largest, but we have limited resources. So we want to make sure that we are being able to really move the needle in the areas that we are investing.
Right.
And again, I don't think nothing is going to be eliminated, but maybe packed under some areas. So we'll continue to fund all the needs of our community. But again, I think we are really paying attention and being more intentional in moving the needle in specific areas. Well, another thing that I wanted to share with you, so you asked me about what is happening. So this is one in terms of United Way. In terms of our society, Rick, unquestionably, COVID was really a big hit for our society. We can see around, doesn't have to be any expert. You look around and you see homelessness and, has increased dramatically in our city. So I think this is a problem for all of us, and we see this happening. The cost of living as well, rising dramatically. So also after COVID, with disruptions in net logistics and networks, again, the prices went up. We go to the supermarket, we feel that. And what is the result of that? The result is that, and then you have automation as well, which, as I said, eliminating entry-level jobs in all sectors. And normally the example that I give, although silly, if you go to Walmart or to any supermarket, you have 2 cashiers and you have like 30 self-checkout, right? And maybe one person looking after all of that. And these used to be 30 jobs, right? And generally speaking, for youth, for example, and that's why you have one of the reasons that you have high unemployment rate. So the reasons I think for high unemployment rates are, one, lack of entry-level jobs, and the second, as the cost of living is so high, a lot of seniors are not finding a way to retire. So they keep part-time jobs that potentially would go to youth.
Right.
And I know that I'm mixing up a few things, but I think I speak strongly. I think those things speak strongly to some of the trends that we're seeing in our society.
The trends that you just mentioned, do you think that drives more people to be interested in entrepreneurship? Kind of like, well, I can't depend on other people. I think I'll do it myself.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think that what we call a bit of force entrepreneurship, not necessarily you saw an opportunity, but you're not finding other opportunities to self-sustain, which is no problem at all. Right. And then you end up thinking, what if I think about becoming an entrepreneur? And this can go from doing my mom's special cookie or cake all the way to something more ambitious, right? And
like being a certified diving instructor.
Something like that. And open a diving center in Halifax or something like that.
You just never know.
Oh, I love that.
Hey, there you go. thank you so much for coming in and speaking with us. I love talking about different aspects of entrepreneurship, and certainly today we've had a very different conversation from our last guest. It's been so great, and I know that we've given our listeners a lot of things to think about, especially if they're involved in social enterprises or nonprofits, or if their business idea somehow revolves around those that may be in some way disadvantaged and are looking for some support or some guidance, to contact you, contact
Please.
United Way. It's just amazing. And you're so giving of your knowledge. And I just want to say obrigado.
Oh, obrigado. Thank you, Rick. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
And
Fabio.
again, to your audience, if I can be of any help at United Way, sincerely give me a call. I'm not promising anything.
Right.
I'm just promising my attention and to listen to folks and see how I can help. And if we have grants, I'll be able to share when this will come, what is the process, and happy to help if I can.
And they can find you on LinkedIn as well?
They can find me on LinkedIn as well. Please connect with me.
It is the popular platform these
Yes,
days.
indeed.
Great. Thank you. I'm sure people will contact you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rick. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you for watching. And be sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you check out your podcasts. Until next time, keep turning small bites into big wins.